Hello, and thank you so very much for tuning in. My name is Rabbi Shlomo Zalman Bregman of the Jewish Executive Learning Network. You're listening to J-Root Radio, which is a phenomenal radio station in Brooklyn and beyond worldwide. This is our weekly Wednesday night shiur, our Wednesday night class in the Torah portion of the week, the Parsha of the week. I'm thrilled to be here with you. And as always, I think we have some phenomenal Torah to learn. The name of our weekly learning program together on the Parsha is called Short and Sweet on the Parsha. Why is it called Short and Sweet on the Parsha? Because the insights are hopefully given over in a short, sweet way. And they're actually pretty much all of the Torah that I'll say over tonight and each week can be found in my new Torah work, my commentary called Short and Sweet on the Parsha, which is published and distributed internationally by Feldheim Publishers. And we have some great stuff for you tonight. If you'd like to get in touch with me outside of this week's radio program or any point in the future, simply send me an email. My email is director@jeln.org. I'd be happy to connect with you in terms of the learning of tonight. My wife and I would be happy to assist anybody in terms of shidduchim. They're searching for a spouse. I'm also an attorney. If there's anything I could do for you, I'm completely here, happy and available to help. So let's get started without further ado on this week's Parsha. So we have a treat that this week it's actually a double Parsha. There's two Torah portions this week, and we'll find that the two Torah portions of the week are called Behar and Bechukosai, which bring us to the end of the book of Vayikra, the book of Leviticus. Okay, so let's start with Parshas Behar. So Parshas Behar over here starts in the book of Leviticus, chapter 25, verse 1. Hashem spoke to Moshe on Har Sinai. Now, the famous question the commentaries ask over here is, well, why does the Torah start with this mitzvah over here, with this preamble? Every mitzvah in the Torah was given by Hashem, by God, to Moses and to the Jewish people at Mount Sinai. So why is it that the mitzvah of Shemitah, the mitzvah that requires the Jewish people to allow the land of Israel to lie fallow every seventh year, why is that mitzvah emphasized and highlighted over here as being given at Har Sinai? That's kind of obvious because every mitzvah is given that way, but you don't find the mitzvahs to keep kosher or to respect the Shabbos or to fast on Yom Kippur. They're not introduced with these words, Hashem spoke to Moshe and Har Sinai. I mean, so why over here? It's a famous question. So if you have the ability to do so, I encourage you to look up what Rashi has to say on the topic. But irrespective of that, I'd like to share over with you other pshatim, different other insights from other commentaries that lend some interesting context and flavor to that question. The first insight I'll share over with you comes from the Chassam Sofer. Chassam Sofer explains that the mitzvah Shemitah proves that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God, the Holy One, blessed be He, He's the one who gave us the Torah, could never have come from a human author. Why? He said, well, I'll tell you how I know Hashem gave us a Torah, and the mitzvah of Shemitah proves that. Why? He goes, would anybody else have had put forward the types of guarantees that you find associated with this mitzvah? If you look in the Torah, it's clear that on the 7-year land cycle, the seventh being the Shemitah year, when the land should be left alone and there's pretty much no planting of crops and the like, the Torah says that don't worry, what are the Jewish people going to eat on year 7? Don't you worry. You don't have to worry. The Jewish people will be fine because on the 6th year of the 7-year cycle, God's going to produce a triple crop that'll take care of everybody. They'll have food for year 6. They'll have for food for year 7. They'll have even for that 8th year, which is really year 1 of the new cycle, till the crops grow back. Don't worry. So who can make such a promise that the land in any given year, 1 out of every 7, meaning the 6th year it's going to produce triple? Who makes such a promise? Who else can make a promise other than God, similarly, that don't worry, you can leave your land alone for 1 year, don't crop, don't harvest, don't worry, you'll have plenty to eat, millions and millions of you. Only Hashem could make such a promise and a guarantee and fulfill it. So says the Chassam Sofer, so how does this, okay, that's very nice, but how does this connect back to why this mitzvah is introduced that Hashem spoke to the Jewish people on Mount Sinai. What does one thing have to do with the other? So he says that the mitzvah of Shemitah is uniquely linked to Har Sinai, which is mentioned in our verse, because the promises associated with this mitzvah, and of course their fulfillment, which actually did happen, the promises that come with this mitzvah prove that this mitzvah, along with the entirety of Torah, was given to Moshe on Har Sinai. So that's how the Chassam Sofer explains why the mitzvah of Shemitah is mentioned and recorded at the top of our pasuk. Okay, that's number one, and in connection to Shemitah. Now, the Chassam Sofer's son, he has a different approach in his writings. He suggests that the connection between the mitzvah of Shemitah and the giving of the Torah at Har Sinai is that this mitzvah of Shemitah allows us to re-experience the feelings of national unity that the Jewish people achieved when they received the Torah at Mount Sinai. How so? He says like this. He says, one of the biggest barriers to unity and being able to connect to other people is ego and selfishness. Those are some of the biggest barriers, and you only have to look around you to probably realize that the Chassam Sofer knew what he was talking about. But he goes on to say that fortunately, during the Shemitah year, the 7th year, the land and its produce are hefker, they're ownerless. And he says that when property isn't owned by anybody, arrogance and a me-first kind of attitude, they tend to dissipate. So therefore, the Shemitah year creates the environment whereby it's much, much easier to recreate that rarefied atmosphere of achdus, of unity, that we originally experienced back at Har Sinai. Okay, let's keep going in our Parsha. Now, a common question that people ask is, what are the Jewish farmers supposed to do during the Shemitah year? After all, if they're not farming, they're going to have a lot of time on their hands. What are they supposed to do? And the answer is, that's a pretty simple question. What the farmers are supposed to do is what every Jewish man is supposed to do with his extra time, and that's sit and learn. Learn Torah. Sit down, learn some Torah, open a Gemara, open a Sefer, and get to work. Connect to your Creator. That's what you're supposed to do. Indeed, you'll find that if you study the Mefarshim closely, the commentaries closely, you will find this theme expressed again and again, time and again, that the Shemitah year is to be used for the farmers to go sit and learn Torah. Okay, so and a lot of them talk about this. The Sforno discusses this. The Shachal Torah discusses this. They all talk about it. Okay, good. Now I want to share with you now an idea that you can find in my Sefer, short and sweet on the Parsha, on page 319, that comes from the Chidah. The Chidah, he joins all these other Mefarshim, these commentaries, and expresses the idea that yes, the Shemitah year is intended to help the Jewish people grow in their Limud Torah, their Torah study. But the Chidah makes this point based on a very interesting source, how he brings it out. He brings it based upon a passage in the Gemara, in the Talmud, Tractate Brachos, Dav Lamed Hey Amud Beis, 35b, and a comment of Rashi over there. So in case you don't have the Talmud in front of you, or you don't know by memory what it says, I'll tell you what it says. The Gemara says over there that Rava, he asked his Talmidim, his students, hey, don't come to my yeshiva in the Jewish year, during the Jewish month of Nisan. Why? Because that's when the grain is going to be harvested. So he said, hey, don't come to my yeshiva in Chodesh Nisan. Don't come in the month of Nisan. That's the time you're supposed to harvest the grain. The Gemara there also says that he instructed them, oh, hey, another month too. Don't come to the yeshiva in the month of Tishrei. Don't come in Tishrei. Why? Because that's when the grapes and olives are going to be pressed. So the Mefarshim ask, classic question, hey, was Rava more concerned with his students' bank accounts than their development as Torah scholars? I mean, what is this? When do you ever hear of one of the greatest sages in Jewish history saying, hey, don't come to the yeshiva, got to go harvest the grain, don't come learn Torah, time for the olives and the grapes to be dealt with, right? So he was more worried about their money? So the answer is chas v'shalom, of course not, God forbid, no. So the Rashi, all of them, the commentaries explain that his motivation was that these 2 months, Tishrei, Nisan, these were the months that his students could earn sufficient parnasa, sufficient livelihood, enough money, such that they would be free to devote the rest of the entire year for learning. So it's not that he wasn't worried about their learning. No, fakert we say in Yiddish. Fakert means the opposite. Got to remember to translate everything because some people listen in who don't know Yiddish or Hebrew, so we try to translate. So he says no. So it's not that he wasn't interested. We say Adarabba. That's more like Hebrew, yeshivish Hebrew. He says Adarabba. No, the opposite. It's because I care about their steiging in Torah, their growth in Torah learning. It's for that reason that I don't want them to come those months, so they'll make enough money so they can really bang away in yeshiva and grow tremendously in Torah the other months. Okay, so very cool. So based upon this foregoing Gemara, the Chidah now comes in and he draws the following conclusion. He says, wait a minute, 2 months of Torah study were lost every single year. After 6 years, a total of 12 months of learning would have been missed. So therefore, says the Chidah, it comes out that the 12 months of learning that had been missed while chasing your livelihood have to be made up during the Shemitah year, which is a nice vart. So that's how the Chidah brings out from a very interesting angle from this Gemara in Tractate Brachos, this idea from this angle, this starting point. He brings out that point that the Shemitah year is to be used for a person to devote himself extra to Limud Torah, for Torah study. Okay, you're listening to J-Root Radio. Let's keep going in our weekly Parsha Shir. The next vart, the next idea, the next piece, I call it Don't Pass the Buck, and you'll see what I want over here. Now, we said that the Shemitah is a 7-year cycle. The Shemitah concept is a 7-year agricultural cycle. 7 times 7 is 49. The 50th year has a special status as well. That's something called Yovel. In English, they call it Jubilee. I don't really know what that means, but the Jubilee year, the Yovel year, that's the 50th year. So you find that the mitzvah of Shemitah and Yovel, they're kind of presented in the Chumash together. Now, it's very, very interesting. If you look closely, and if you understand Lashon HaKodesh, the Holy Tongue Hebrew, you'll discover that the entire Yovel passage in our Chumash, it's written in what we call Lashon Rabim. Not Harabim, Lashon Rabim. Lashon Rabim means plural tense. The Yovel passage, it's written in plural tense. So this mitzvah is clearly directed to the entire Jewish people. Okay. But it's curious to note that the very next portion of Parshas Behar, right after the mitzvah Yovel, which deals with how we are to treat the indigent and poor people, and we have to prevent the poor from falling into poverty, that's written in Lashon Yachid, singular tense, okay? So Yovel, Lashon Rabim. If you understand the Hebrew nuance, you could see in the Hebrew, Lashon HaKodesh, it's written to the whole Jewish people. Comes to the commandments to support the poor and don't let them fall into poverty. It's Lashon Yachid, written in singular tense. So now, if you pick up a translation of the Chumash, you're not really going to notice probably because it's a little bit imperceptible if you only know the English. But in the Hebrew, it's clear, and it's almost as though Hashem is only addressing this latter section, the mitzvah to support the poor. It's like God's only talking to one person. So the question is why? Why is there a shift in the tense, in the plural to singular with respect to whom Hashem is addressing? So the Alshich, he provides an answer to this question, which reveals a great insight into human nature. He says like this, the Alshich. He says, when people hear of a poor person or somebody who's in need of help, what do a lot of people say? A lot of people say, ideally I'd like to help, but I'm sure there's somebody much better suited to this task. What do people say? People say things like this. They say, doesn't Ruvain have more money than me? Doesn't Sarah have more influence? Doesn't Shimon have more connections? Doesn't David have a better, hookup in the community that he could leverage some resources to help this person? Yeah, we know this is true. A lot of people say, I'd like to help, but there's other people better suited for the task. That expression frequently passes people's lips. Okay? So the Alshich says that to inform us that this idea is patently false and that you yourself have to get involved in helping the poor, the Torah discusses the passage dealing with the poor in singular tense. In other words, to say, Hashem is saying, I'm talking to you. No, not him, not her, not intending with an intention for you to assign to somebody else. No. I'm talking to you, singular tense, you individual. Do not pass the buck. Okay, that was a little bit of insight from Parshas Behar. With your blessing and permission, although I can't have you formally convey it to me because I can't see you when I'm on the radio, but I'd like your blessing for us to move on from Parshas Behar and work now on the second of this week's Torah portions, and that's Parshas Behar-Bechukosai. So if you're following in short and sweet on the Parsha, we're on page 325. Okay, so it starts out like this: Im Behar-Bechukosai telechu, which means if you will follow my decrees. So what does this mean, if you will follow my decrees? What specifically is that referring to? Is God talking about just observing his commandments in general? What does that mean? So Rashi famously tells us that the phrase Im Behar-Bechukosai telechu means that a Jew must labor intensively in that person's Torah study. You got to labor intensively. That's what it means. It's amelus b'Torah, we call it in Hebrew. You got to toil in Torah. Okay, good. Now, the Gemara in Tractate Avodas Zarah Daf Hey Amud Aleph relates that the word im, which begins this phrase, im bechukosai telechu, im, the Gemara says it denotes supplication, it's begging, it's pleading. Okay, so if that's what the word im means, if you put it all together, the verse is clearly telling us that Hashem is begging, pleading, supplicating with us to learn Torah. Im Behar-Bechukosai telechu doesn't just mean amelus b'Torah, toil in Torah. He's saying he's begging us and pleading with us. If you tie the Rashi together with that Gemara, that's what it seems to mean, and that sounds like a truly stunning idea. At least in my book, the question is, why would Hashem have to beg us? Why would God have to beg us to learn Torah? What's that about? So the answer, I would suggest to you, is relatively simple. From the time of Matan Torah, from the time of the giving of the Torah, Mount Sinai, and onward, Hashem created a system whereby all of the blessings, all of the brachas that he wishes to bestow upon the Jewish people, and this even goes so far as including and subsuming our attachment to Hashem himself, all of the blessings are contingent upon our study and observance of the Torah. Now, in part, this is due to the fact that the entire Torah is actually comprised of different names of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is a mystical idea found in the Zohar, Parshas Yisro. Number one. Number two, this mechanism that God's blessing is bestowed on us by virtue of attachment to the Torah, it's also predicated upon a mystical reality that the Zohar speaks about in Parshas Vayikra, this mystical reality that Klal Yisrael, the Jewish people, the Torah, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu are Chadhu. The Klal Yisrael, Torah, and Hashem himself are one. So therefore, if you attach yourself to Torah, you're attaching yourself to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Moreover, I would add that the fact that Limud Torah, Torah study, and observance are the means by which we may access Hashem's blessing, it's also the meaning, I would suggest to you, of an enigmatic passage in the Zohar in Parshas Achrei. If you look over there, the Zohar says that the words, the first words in the Aseret HaDibros, they call in English the Decalogue, the 10 Commandments. The first words over there, the first word is Anoichi. Anoichi stands, and this is written in Aramaic, Anoichi, it says the Zohar, stands for Ana, Nafshis, Kasavis, Yahavis, which means the A, well, in English, in Ana, Nafshis, and N, Kasavis, Yahavis, which would stand for I presented my soul in writing. My is capital M, it's God. So in other words, Hashem is proudly announcing, the Zohar says, that giving of the 10 Commandments, and when he gave us the Torah, that the greatest intensity and concentration of Kedusha and even God's essence himself are to be found in his Torah. That's what the Zohar means. So therefore, if you tie it all together, I think it's pretty simple. You can understand why God will beg us to learn Torah. He's pleading with us to avail ourselves of the mechanism by which we may access and unleash the torrent of blessings, of brachas that he wants to bestow upon us. That's why. So Im I'm begging you, I'm pleading with you, sit and learn. The Torah is comprised of different names of me. There's a reality, the Zohar says, number 2, that Yisrael, that the Torah and me were one. You access the Torah, you're accessing me. And I also told you that the Zohar from Parsha Zacharemos, that the word Anoichi, which introduces the giving of the Torah Mount Sinai, it stands for an expression that Hashem says, I presented my soul in writing, meaning you want to access me, access my Torah. So, okay, so it makes sense. So that's why Limud Torah is the primary mechanism, learning, by which the Jewish people are able to access God's blessings, number 1. Number 2, now we'll understand why he's pleading with us to sit and learn and to get on with it. Okay, now I want to share a different idea. In our quest for authentic amelis b'Torah, really toiling in Torah, it's very important for a person to raise their sights and let's just say to aim high. Okay, you have to aim very high if you're a Jewish person and you're making a goal of learning Torah. Aim for a very high level, and in fact, that's the message that the Lev Simcha of Ger, one of the recent Ger Rebbes, derives from a famous Mishnah. If you look in Pirkei Avos, famous Mishnah, a lot of the Mishnahs in Pirkei Avos, some of them are the most famous because they appear in the beginning. And it's chapter 1, Mishnah 3. The Mishnah says that we should not be like those servants who serve their master for the sake of receiving a reward. Now, what is this, for the sake of receiving a reward? The phrase is translated into Hebrew as almanas lekabel pras. Okay? So this is what the sages tell us in Pirkei Avos. Hey, don't be like those servants who serve their master almanas lekabel pras, for the sake of receiving a reward. You should serve God because it's true, and of course He's going to reward you, but the reward is not the motivation. Okay. But the wording here points out the Lev Simcha of Ger. It's a bit unusual. Why? Because you almost always find the word schar is used in the Torah for reward, not pras. It doesn't say over here in the Mishnah, almanas lekabel pras, don't be like those servants who serve God, almanas lekabel schar, to receive a reward. It uses the word pras. It uses the word pras over here, which is a pretty unusual word. If you'd ask almost every Hebrew speaker, how do you say reward? They'll say schar, something like that. Pras they wouldn't say. So what is that about? So the Ger Rebbe brings a Gemara from Tractate Brachos, Daf Lametes Amud Beis, and he notes that the word pras comes from, for example, the word perusa. Pras can refer in Hebrew to a mere portion of a whole loaf of bread. It's pretty clear. If you open the Gemara in Brachos on 39b, find the word perusa. Perusa means pras, same shayrish. It means a portion of a whole loaf. So says the Ger Rebbe, when it comes to avodas Hashem, we should never be like those who serve their master, meaning God, for the sake of receiving a pras. Don't be like those who are almanas lekabel pras. That's why you're doing it. You're trying to get a pras. You want the crumbs. You want a piece of the loaf of whole bread. No way. Instead, he says we should shoot for the stars and wish to achieve enormous things in the service of our Creator. That's what he wants to say over here. But there's a lot more to say on this topic, but I'll just explain this as well while we're here. From one of his ancestors, these Sfas Emes in a moment. While we're instructed to aim high in our Torah study, at the same time, you have to always counterbalance that value with other statements of Chazal, other statements of our sages, not just the one in Pirkei Avos. You have to know the whole picture in order to maintain the correct perspective. Okay, so for example, the Sifri reports that a person should not say that he desires to learn Torah because I want to be known as a Talmid Chacham. I want to learn because I want to be, famous or known as a guy who sits in yeshiva. And you shouldn't even learn Torah because you want to merit a long life, or even you want to be in good shape for the afterlife. Nope. The Sifri says that ideally you should perform each and every mitzvah, and certainly your Torah study, purely out of our love for Hashem. And it is true what the Gemara says in Tractate Mayid Katan, Tazayin Amud Beis 16b, that any person who's engaged deeply in Torah study within Beis Medrash, that person can rest assured that your learning is ultimately going to proclaim you abroad to the whole world. But even though that's what the Gemara says, when it comes time to learn, we have to make sure we entertain the right motivations. And the Sfas Emes, an ancestor of the Ger dynasty in Parshas Baloischa, in one of his commentaries, he reminds us, he goes, Hashem doesn't want us to fill ourselves with Torah during our time in this world in order that we can get up there in the next world and show off how much Torah we know in Olam Haba. Sfas Emes says, no, it's Hashem's desire that we should learn with awe, with reverence, and with love of Him. And those are the things that should drive our voracious appetite for further Torah accomplishment. It should never be that we're primarily motivated by a hope for future recognition. Okay. Now, I was sharing over with you some interesting Zohars before. Maybe I'll give you over a little bit more mystical Torah in the time we still have together tonight, okay? So this Vart, this piece I'm going to share over with you now, I call this piece Same Journey, Different Impressions. It's found on the bottom of 328 in Short and Sweet. Okay, here we go. So in reference to the need to toil profusely in Torah study, a person might say, why is it that some Gedolim, some Torah giants, some prodigious Torah scholars, some of them seem much more attracted to and proficient in the world of what we call drush. Drush means the style of learning that's focused on homiletic expositions. Yet, other big Torah scholars, they're drawn to halacha. They're drawn to Jewish law and psak, Jewish legal rulings. Yet others, they seem to derive their vitality from the world of mystical writings. Why is it that even among great Torah scholars, their proclivity, their inclination varies from one to the other? What is that about? It's a good question. So there's a lot to say on this, but I'm trying to give the short and sweet answer, even within what the short and sweet answer is. Okay, so the mystical Sfarim speak out these topics, and they say that these differences can be accounted for via an understanding of a certain mystical concept, a Kabbalistic concept. I often seem to stutter when I say this expression. It's a concept called Seder, that's the easy part, Hishtalshelus. There's just a lot of shins and lameds and sh and l sounds in there. Seder Hishtalshelus. But I said it correctly, but I don't know if I could say it 3 times fast. Anyway, the mystical Sfarim say that if you understand the Seder Hishtalshelus, you'll understand this. Now, what does that term mean? Well, it's very difficult, I don't know, maybe even impossible to encapsulate in a small, precise definition what this concept is, but it refers broadly to the order by which Hashem laid out and developed and unfolded, so to speak, His order of creation. That's what the Jewish mystical concept that I referenced refers to. So how does this somehow answer for us why some Torah scholars are more drawn towards one area of learning versus another? Okay, so I'll tell you like this. If you know the Gemara in Tractate Yevamos and Menachos and Bechiris, it says over there that the human soul and the embryo are both created within a 40-day span of time. And the Gemara, in fact, in Tractate Sota hints to that idea, because it speaks over there on 2a of the 40 days before the formation of an embryo. Okay, fine. So what happens in these 40 days? So within these 40 days, the child's soul, who's coming down to this world, passes through 40 different levels on its descent to this world. So you might ask me, so why 40 levels? Well, the answer is simple. There's 4 basic spiritual worlds. One's called Atzilus, Beriya, Yetzira, and Asiya. 4 basic spiritual worlds, and each of those 4 basic spiritual worlds, each one has 10 levels within it. Now, these 10 levels, they parallel something we call the Asara Ma'amarais, the 10 divine utterances with which the world was created. So God created the world with 10 divine utterances. It's a first Mishnah in Pirkei Avot in chapter 5, for example. So those 10 levels within each of those 4 spiritual worlds parallels the 10 utterances by which the world was created, and also the 10 verses that proclaim Hashem's kingship that are recited on Rosh Hashanah in the Musaf prayer. and the Talmud speaks about it, and so on and so forth. So what does this mean? So, and while each and every soul, and here's the real answer, is passing through these 40 levels on its way down to this world, it's more mushpa. The soul is more mushpa. Mushpa, I think we would translate as influenced, okay? The soul will be more mushpa by some stops along the way than others. The soul can be said, in other words, to be like absorbing more of the spirituality and influence at some of these levels and some of these stops than at others. And in turn, some of the mystical Sfarim say that will impact the person's ultimate orientation and pull and feeling of calling in the future to one area of Torah study versus another. So bottom line, mystically speaking, why are some Torah scholars drawn to one area of learning more than another? And because some specialize in one area and some in another, even if everybody tries ideally to know it all. What's the short answer? Short answer is the soul coming down to this world over 40 days passes through 40 levels. And even though it stops at each one, the influence of each of those levels in the four basic worlds of Atzilus, Bria, Yitzir, and Asiya, basically the soul soaks up, so to speak, and as mushpa is influence in varying degrees, and based upon that, it affects a person's ultimate interest and orientation in the future. I hope you enjoyed tonight's learning very, very much. My name is Rabbi Shlomo Zalman Bregman of the Jewish Executive Learning Network. You've been listening to J-Root Radio, phenomenal radio station. I always wish to thank J-Root for giving me the unique privilege and the singular honor of sharing words of Torah over the net. If you'd like to get in touch with me directly in the week ahead, simply send me an email, director@jeln.org. If you'd like to access any of my other classes, videos, and the like, if you go to YouTube and just type in Rabbi Bregman or Shlomo Zalman Bregman, I have over 100 there. You should be able to find some goodies. And I want to thank you again for being with us for Short and Sweet on the Parsha. Hope you enjoyed it thoroughly. And my time invested in tonight's program will have been worthwhile if you will only keep in mind some of the lessons we covered tonight, and please share them over with others. I wish you a good Shabbos, and that's as they say, that's a wrap. Chazak, chazak, v'nes chazek for the book of Leviticus. And God willing, with Hashem's help, next week we'll be on Parshas Bamidbar and Sefer Bamidbar, beginning the fourth of the 5 books of the Chumash. Have a good night. Looking forward. Bye-bye.